Hello and welcome to FILMFEST München 2021. I am Julia Weigl, a programmer with the festival, and today I will be speaking to Ben Sharrock, the director of Limbo. My first question would be, without talking about Limbo right away, is like, how would you yourself describe your style of filmmaking? Because you have a very particular style of filmmaking that you don't really see that much these days.
That's a good question. I mean, I quite like describing it as absurdist social realism, because I think that it's, what I'm interested in is kind of looking at the real world and looking at kind of real world issues and kind of drawing characters that feel real as well.
Nice, I love that answer. And actually, that's the perfect transition to Limbo itself and my next question, which would be obviously sort of like the leveling out of humor and seriousness in your film, because it is a sort of like serious subject matter, but you choose a very absurd and very humoristic approach.
A lot of that took place in the development period and in the script writing itself, and really sort of, taking the time over trying to balance that tone in the script, but also speaking to people that had been through the asylum system and kind of asking permission to also use humor and saying, how would you feel about making a film about this subject that has comedy in it? And that came back with a really positive response, that people were sort of, tired of the sort of very kind of tragic depictions of the refugee experience, and that we'd been kind of getting used to and seeing a lot in the media and perhaps in the other filmic representations. So it's really, taking every aspect of the filmmaking and thinking about how to use that with the tone of the film.
Yeah, I read one interview with you where you put it very straightforward. You called it sort of like you wanted to tell a different refugee story.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing with this is that it's been something that I've been kind of really interested in for sort of like 10 plus years. And it really kind of goes back to my undergraduate degree before I went into filmmaking, which was in Arabic and politics. Ended up writing a short film and went out to refugee camps in southern Algeria and worked with an NGO there and lived with a family in the camps while we were also developing this short film. And that project was specifically about identity and about how the label of being a refugee affects identity. And then basically that never went ahead because we couldn't get the insurance from the university to make the short film because it was too dangerous. And then I still had this kind of real sort of desire and interest and passion for the subject, and set off to write a screenplay about it. And that sort of just took a long time to do that and figure out how to write a screenplay about this subject matter with my sensibilities as a filmmaker, but also the things that I wanted to avoid in making a film about refugees and the things that I wanted to achieve. And part of that was getting it wrong a lot of the time and having to kind of tear the papers up and start all over again, and doing a lot of research and speaking to people that have been through the asylum system, speaking to organizations that work with refugees on a day-to-day basis, and just sort of spending a long time over it, trying to get it hopefully right.
Let's talk about the setting. Scotland, a Scottish Isle. Like, what's your own connection? Because we get a very unique and very timely sort of like perspective on Scotland. So maybe you can talk a little about that approach that you had with integrating that story into obviously Scotland and the country you live in.
It's interesting because I suppose there was like initially, for me, going into writing this film, there was sort of certain creative desires that I had that were about, that almost came as sort of images, like, and a part of that was the idea of remoteness and kind of picturing this character in this remote environment, and also this sort of Arctic environment I had in my head. But I think as the film kind of went on and the creative process went on, it also became clear to me that this island setting had to be a a metaphor for limbo, a metaphor for purgatory. And that sort of, so then it became this kind of slightly surreal island that is kind of real, but it's also, they really are stuck in a kind of purgatory or limbo.
Thank you so much. It definitely turned out to be a very beautiful and very successful feature. So thank you, Ben, for taking the time to talk with us today.
No, thank you.